Okay, this video is going to be about entropy, and what I want to do is dispel a lot of the mysticism that surrounds the idea of entropy, the arrow of time, and the idea of emergence. So the way people tend to talk about the arrow of time is that they will say that it can't be seen at the sort of microscopic level, but it somehow emerges statistically or at the global scale. And I want to unpack that a bit with an example. So let's say you have a billiard ball. Usually particles are modeled as billiard balls. And it bounces off another billiard ball. It transfers the momentum. It reflects at a different angle. Follows Newtonian physics, basically. Everything that I just described could have happened in the reverse. So imagine recording it on video and playing that backwards. That could have also happened going forwards in time. There is no way to discriminate between forwards in time and backwards in time at that scale. That's the claim, anyway. So, and there's truth to it, but there's a lot more to the story. So if we're focused on that model, first of all, what I would say is it's apparent that there's more than one type of entropy. So the original concept of entropy has to do with temperature and how temperatures tend to even out over time. And that's how we get the arrow of time, meaning that you start off with an imbalance in temperatures, and over time they become more balanced on their own. We already know why that happens. That's just, there's no mystery there. It has to do with black body radiation. And it also has to do with how waves expand over time, because the electromagnetic radiation is being radiated in the form of a wave. So there's that. There's also another kind of entropy, which has changed its meaning many times over time, but I describe it as Rubik's Cube entropy. The idea is that you could have a Rubik's Cube that's all, solved, and you could have one that's all mixed up, and the one that's more mixed up would have higher entropy. It looks more random, it's more disorderly. And the one that's solved has lower entropy. And the idea is it's much easier to mess a Rubik's Cube up than it is to solve it. You could solve it just by accident, but it's very unlikely. So those are two completely different concepts of entropy. And unfortunately, they're often getting used interchangeably. And that's what creates so much mystery about the arrow of time. The reason that we have an arrow of time for, say, a Rubik's Cube is because we have a goal, and the goal is to solve the Rubik's Cube. That's what the Rubik's Cube was created for. It's the same with any other kind of order. Order is actually very subjective in the sense that it doesn't happen without people. It doesn't happen without life forms. The idea that there's one way things should be and that's orderly and that every other way is disorderly, that's a very human idea. Really, to think about, before we can even think about order, we have to think about what the goal is. Every system is orderly if it's put together in a certain way that achieves a goal. And because goals are always in the future, that's what creates the arrow of time. Goals are in the future, they're not in the past. So that's why there's a difference between going forwards and going backwards in time. Another example that gets used a lot would be if you take something and put it in a blender and it gets messed up, you can't just start the blender again and have it all go back to how it was before. Now, we already know why that is, right? Because whatever you put in the blender was created for some purpose. It had a certain arrangement. Anyway, that doesn't happen in the absence of life. These kinds of things just don't happen. And the second law of thermodynamics only applies to thermodynamic entropy. It does not apply to Rubik's Cubes or anything else that gets mixed up or put in an orderly arrangement. So it's not a shock if you could violate that principle. I'm going to do a few other videos about entropy. That's just one thing I wanted to clear up, and that's the relationship between the arrow of time, the different meanings of the term entropy, and the idea of emergence.